Well, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're consuming this broadcast. Welcome back to Aayanisms, a podcast about movies, pets, cricket, and geopolitics. I'm your host, Ayan, and I try to grow a tribe of listeners, of viewers who have some time and patience to hear a slow burn, straight talk, no mumbo jumbo, no three things that will change your life kind of events in any conversation. Today, I'm going to talk to you about Dhurandhar Part 2, The Revenge. Yes, you've seen a lot of reviews. Yes, you've already heard whatever that you have. And you haven't watched it, then please strongly recommend go watch it. This will be a spoiler filled review. Now, what's different in this is I am not just reviewing it scene by scene, so that you know that's one of the biggest pet peeves I have with some of these film critics. They're trying to explain the movie scene by scene, sequence to sequence. This is not what happens at Ionisms, right? What we are trying to do is infer the movies and from a cinematic angle, from a technical angle, from many other facets, and not just go explain to you what happened in this scene and what that means. So that's not going to happen. When I say spoilers, I do mean that I'm going to review the movie across all the technicalities of the movie: sound design, costume design, cinematography, editing, acting, performance, and some of the softer aspects as well, which as a fan one would like to see and follow. So don't take it too seriously. Take it with a grain of salt. But at least I'm trying to reduce the subjectivity of reviewing someone's work of passion. Like it's very easy to comment on something on hindsight when it's a finished end product. Imagine when you do not have the benefit of hindsight, you're just creating something which is on paper typed and you're just going about creating it. So I full respect to the director, Mr. Aditya Dhar, to create something out of nothing or paper. And it's very uh, almost one should not be dismissive that how difficult it is to do that, to land something that is on paper onto celluloid. It's very, very difficult. So I give you that. But now that we have the end product in hand, we want to do it justice by trying to be as objective. Now, the counter question is, and we were discussing this in one of our groups, is do movies need to be over intellectualized? Like it's an entertainment medium, right? It's supposed to entertain you. So do you really need to have a scientific angle to the story? And while I think that there is an element of there is merit to that argument, it's also important that it is within the realms of believability. It is within the realms of authenticity, because that also is part of storytelling, right? You believe that that is possible. Now, if you're creating a genre, a fantastical genre, for example, fantasy genre, where you know physics defying, gravity defying jumps are the order of the day, goes with the narrative, the flow, everything. The trouble is when you mix and match that. You're trying to show something grounded, but you're infusing fantasy elements into it. That's the inconsistency that I'm talking about. So the authenticity of the storytelling is very crucial. Under the ambit of creative liberties, how far can you go? Those are the things, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit more objectively, and I've made a scorecard, as it is like some of us corporate folk do. And then you will see, and I have some commentary around each and every point. See, the thing with sequels is, sequels are a tricky business. They come with more budget, they come with more hype, and a dangerous expectation to outdo something that has already worked. Think Matrix 2 versus Matrix 1. Just thinking. And that's exactly where D2, aka Dhurandhar 2, walks a tightrope. So in this episode, I'm comparing D1 with D2 under the same parameters, and not just as a film but as a craft. So if this is something that floats your boat, stick around. This will be a long review, TLDR, TLDV, too long do view. And then let's leave some comments if you have a different point of view, and that is absolutely fine. My point of view is not that of a subject matter expert either. I speak as a film fan. And so with that, with all the disclaimers and everything, let's dive into reviewing D2, in a scorecard manner. Okay, so here goes. I'm going to review the scorecard, but before I jump in, let me explain how the scorecard actually works. So it is rated on a scale of 1 to 5, from poor, 1 equals poor, to 5, which is elevative artistry. Now, elevative artistry, let me just spend a quick minute there. If Rajnikant is swirling his shades or flipping the cigarette, I don't necessarily, I mean, I love that, I enjoy that, but I don't necessarily consider it as elevative artistry. Elevative artistry in my books is something that lifts the whole scene, creates a lasting impact. It's something that you think added to the narrative and not just the stylized quotient of it. So if you take the recent example of Dhurandhar 1 itself, D1, and I'll refer to them as D1 and D2 for more convenience. Mr. Akshay Khanna's performance was elevative, right? It raised the bar, if it were. As was Mr. Rakesh Bedi's, even in D1. It was a little bit elevative artistry. It didn't become caricaturish. And so on. And I'll come to that. So keep that in mind. When I rate something as 5, it means it has lifted the whole product itself. And then there are ones in the middle, which is does not meet expectations. You at least know that at a movie of this size scale, it should at least have these parameters, and it falls below that. Meets expectations, self-explanatory, and above expectations is like, oh, I didn't expect, oh, this is new, that kinds. So that's how I'm going to, one can keep on increasing the scorecard parameters, but just to keep it simple, right? It's on a scale of 1 to 5. And as in when we build the slides together, you will see the scorecard add up. And if you happen to be till the end, you will see the final score and then some commentary around that. So stick around till then. So let's quickly build the first part of the slide. The first set of conversations I've chosen, and this is not in any sequential or chronological order or order of importance, whatever that has come to my mind. So cinematography, editing, runtime, sound design, scene continuity, and CGI. So let me give you the reasons why I have rated D2 in this versus D1. And so it gives you something to think about. Let's start with the easier one, CGI, right at the bottom here. Now, the reason it is at 2 is for a large budget action thriller, espionage thriller flick, which has already garnered 1,000 crores in the previous installment. One would have expected at the very least it to be above expectations. And the reason it is below expectations, look at some of the CGI, very, very poor quality CGI of the blast sequences. It warranted an authentic actual explosion, and you had the budget for it. So I'm like, why would you not do it? And some of the drone shots towards the entire town, especially towards the climax when they're showing the entire area, it seemed very set piece kind of thing and not blended in reality as D1 was. Now, it could well be that in D1 we were watching it for the first time, so we were like, there was no reference to context, so the believability was higher. But having watched D1 probably second time around, it still felt that the set design, the color palette matching was a little more authentic as compared to D2. Now I know folks who have created the movie will say we have actually made only one movie and divided it into 2 parts. Fair, but if that was the case, then you couldn't have made the first 3.5 hours very authentic and the balance 3.5 hours less authentic, right? So the authenticity shouldn't have dropped. So I particularly jarring were the explosion and the wire work, right? People's slow motions flying all over the place. It D1 had the right amount of slow mo, like it wasn't strewn right throughout. And here in D2, it felt very accentuated that there were just too many such shots. Even in the sequence where Hamza goes to the Baloch leader and almost the replica of Sher Baloch entry of Mr. Akshay Khanna's, albeit this time with a different song. It was a sequence which was prolonged slow motion. And the dancers were rising up in the air and firing to the ground. You show it once, you show it twice. I think it went for about 5 times. It was like it was derailing from the narrative and the mojo of the moment. The presentation of that moment was like, wow. There was some history leading up to that moment. In this case, the slow motion distracted me a lot. So we'll come to the other part, but CGI, very, very off putting. Scene continuity. Now, if you see the picture, and this is nitpicking, and I might be wrong because I was sitting far behind in the audience. The picture when Jaskirat Rangi's character was about to, right at the start, right, the family picture. Now he has turquoise eyes or colored eyes, but none of the other, nor the father, nor the mother, nor the sister, nobody. Now, can it be possible? Genetically slightly difficult, but you should have had either the mother or the father with turquoise eyes, which is why he would have inherited that. And it could have been one of the reasons, I'm just extrapolating, one of the reasons why he also got picked. It's not just about the physicality, the psychology, but how well will the physicality of this person fit into the people there. And Pashtos and Baloches typically, or Afghans, have turquoise or light colored eyes. And so that could have been one of a very intelligent nuance there where they said, oh, not only did he fit the killing machine, nothing to look forward to, but also physicality. And so this person had a slighter edge than some of the others. But that's just me. So that stood out. And towards the climax, there was another, I think it was slightly lesser. It's when Hamza is walking all fully, drenched in blood. This is post the train sequence in the end, messed up with all the blood wounds and everything. There is a color palette change there. It's in one sequence just before the blast, the blood shades are lighter, and then they cut to the next shade when he's walking, I think, lighting a cigarette. The blood shades are much darker. So somewhere that scene continuity they missed there. Again, these are nitpicking, not showstoppers. Many would have missed. I must have missed, but I'm just saying that when you're looking with a fine tuning of continuity, and there was some more strewn small here and there's, but it's like I was thinking of the character which was supporting Bansal, which was supporting Ajay Sanyal, right? He never aged in the 10 years. Like I can understand Mr. Dowal coloring his hair and dyeing his hair and being black, but there had to be a development in the facial, that whenever they were showing Mr. Dowal's character, Mr. Sanyal's character closer to 2015 or thereabouts, then there had to be an aging from 1994 to that. That aging bit was missing in perhaps almost all the characters, right? So that was a attention to detail, scene continuity. Sound design, the arrangement was good. It was, but it felt in D2, it felt a little more, I want to impress you with a catchy number. It didn't feel elevative artistry bit. It didn't feel organic like it did in D1. And so I have no such bigger complaint. That's why it's like a 3 meets expectations, or it didn't blow my mind away. Runtime. Wow, this is his editing and runtime is probably both go hand in hand. Easily, this could have been 45-minute to 60-minute shorter. So this could have been a 2 hour, 45-minute at best, or 2 hour, 30-minute at best. There was enough slow-mo that could have been, without upsetting the narrative flow, without upsetting the plot, without upsetting the storyline. You could have edited. I mean, I think they let loose on editing. Seriously, whoever did the final editing bit, the final okaying of the edit, did almost was indulgent. And that's been always the worry with sequels. You want to become more indulgent. You almost feel obligatory to give the audience more than what they have got in part one, thinking that if they're coming back, then I have to have a better paisa vasool, return of investment on that. And that kind of deviates the whole whole narrative, right? The point is, there is a fear in creators that I have to keep on raising the bar from the last time. Otherwise, the audience will think, what's so new in this? And while that thought is right, that you have to deliver a higher, better product, but dialing up the volume, dialing up the less substantive things basically add to noise and not the quality. Like, I mean, if you made that script more tighter or more elements into the, because you had plenty of content, make no mistake, you have plenty of content available. So there could have been lots of plot points that could have added, which would have made the script airtight. There's no room to edit anything. Everything is there for a reason, not just there for cosmetic value. And so editing was very disappointing, and that's why you see from D2 to D1 there is a almost a steep drop. Cinematography, good. Both are good. Some wide shots were very nicely done. The color shades, the color palettes, especially the rain sequences, they were good. In fact, I was tempted to give 3 to D2. One of the things I thought was a bit jarring, it could be one of the tropes that we are conditioned to watching, is the climax probably was in broad daylight, whereas you wanted rain and little bit of darkness and light flashing, and all that could have added to the grimness of it all. And this was right in daylight, which was okay. In fact, it felt so dragged that I almost counted 3 or 4 times when the protagonist should have died, and that would have been a slow clap ending, right? Think of this, right? He one ending was, well, he did manage to get to Major Iqbal, and on his way back in the Pathankot, Delhi to Pathankot train, there is a plot, there is a fire, there is an explosion, some accidental death, which he just goes. And most spies often die very is not, these are not like famous deaths, like spectacular death. There's almost in some corner some stray bullet hit them and they died, or some mysterious circumstances. So that could have been a great exit point. They didn't need to show he reaching uh, Pathankot and then not viewing that. There could have been a sequence where he could have died along with Major Iqbal, saying that, look, I didn't let him succeed, and I died in the cause of serving the nation. That could have been also, yes, it would have been a sad ending. But when you're trying to make a real movie, then the realistic movie is like, how many times did you see? This is going to blow your mind. Has it got to do with scene continuity and authenticity? The city, this is, I'm talking about the climax, right? The city is under fire, or the area is under fire, explosions going on, machine guns raging, and there's a chase sequence. In the chase sequence, while people are running, there's a guy who's laying bricks on the wall. Not once, twice you see that. And you're like, bro, what were you thinking? The city is on fire, run. But the guy was somewhere people missed, I don't know. So the amount of times that Major Iqbal had a straight shot at Hamza could have ended the story right then and there, right? And it's fine that despite dying at the mosque, the Baloch folks came in and still did not let Major Iqbal succeed. That it's not always about you; it could about the whole momentum that you have created, right? And that also could have been an ending. So I counted at least 3 or 4 such ending points which have made the story taut that much more tighter, and it would have left you with a pain and heart, and that's a great ending as well. I know many Indian movies want a very happy ending, but this was not supposed to be designed like that, right? And so yeah, so that was the first 7 criteria. Let's build on to the next set and see where it takes us. We have seen till cinematography, editing, runtime, sound design, continuity, and CGI. Let's talk about authenticity, story flow, plot strength, soundtrack, background score, plot twist, and script. There is one more after this, and then the final score, so hang in there. So much of it I discussed earlier, the authenticism, realism, and believability. It became a bit caricaturish, animated, and masala tropes. The guy is mouthing dialogues when his leg has been chopped off, and I'm repeatedly coming into the climax because that was the most or the least impressive. And so if there was a sub scoring point just to score the climax, I probably put it at 2, and in many cases even 1. And that's when it became nationalistic, hyper nationalistic, jingoistic, even borderline. Look, everybody loves their country. Like, the character arc for Major Iqbal should be, the hero becomes great when the villain is greater. In all cinematic history, the payoff is that much more satisfying when the hero defeats the larger than life villain, right? Think of Mr. Anderson, think of Mogambo, think of Darth Vader, think of any of the other villains who've been projected, built up, and they come with the extra, power or something, and then somehow the protagonist or the hero defeats them and manages. And so Major Iqbal's character arc could have been, he probably was a disillusioned, misinformed, but a true patriot. Like a and there is some flesh to the character saying that, look, I'm dying for a cause for my country, which I fundamentally believe. And there was some commentary during the subplot between him and his father that was totally unnecessary. It didn't add to the narrative. It could have said that how it damaged his childhood, but it didn't delve deep into the because he was portrayed to be very brutal. So probably the backstory as to why he became so brutal wasn't it didn't come out, if that's what they were trying to show with the father son exchange. It had become preachy, the dialogues were cringy, and it was not up to standard at all of the entire narrative which D1 managed to do. And so once you show that character arc of the antagonist, as it were, then it kind of makes the audience look at it that, like they say, right? Someone's terrorist is somebody's freedom fighter. It views, or you need to choose from which angle you want to view the story, right? And so that would have been a very smart move, but they didn't. So the authenticity, realism, believability, to me, went down, and the tropes and the masala content went high. They somebody just made a discriminatory comment, albeit said like it came down from balcony to upper stall, as in D2 came from D1 was balcony material, which apparently seemed very sophisticated, and done to upper stall like paisa milta hai. I know it's a wrong compare, unfair compare, but you get the essence of it, right? You get the drift. And so moving on, story flow, pacing, you're starting off with a intense sequence like a backstory. It probably needed to. I missed the gap. What happened after the hospital in D1, and somewhere that gap to post flashback present was little bit. It went a little jumped back and forth. So there was scene continuity dropping there. There's only one scene where the widow of Rahman Takit comes and slaps and goes. That felt repetitive. Why would every time you are in grief, you come and slap somebody? That was a matter of utmost grief from a person who had such high expectation when she slapped at the passing away of her child. That was authentic, that was genuine. In this time around, it seemed very contrived. And so it almost seemed to me that what Rahman Dekhet got as powerful scene sequences can Hamza, if given the same sequence, do a better bet. It didn't come out. If that was the way it was designed, it didn't come out that way. And there needed to be a little more storyline. What happened to his family, given the fact that all these changes happened? There was no filler continuity scenes that how Rahman Daket's family lived or not after all the fiasco that happened. And so uh, the narrative starts dives right into the pre sequence where you are going into the flashback mode. You see the young version. Now they show the training sequence right at the post credit. Like, well, why would you not show it up front? It would put some linearity to it, right? One, two, three, four, and while he was at the training, this shit happened, so he had to come back. Would have eased the flow. And even in that, you want someone to instantly warm up and switch on. That sequence didn't instantly warm up and switch on for me, because it was, I'm like, okay, I am forcing myself to look. Oh, the guy's expression is very good. The acting is very nice. In fact, the lady who portrayed the younger sister tied to the pump, that emotion was very evocative, very strong, and the expression on Jaskirat's face was well captured. But the things leading up to it felt very caricaturish. Again, one guy taking on 12 people, and without, it's like, I'm not getting hit at all. It immediately, because you're just coming in, your expectations are high. Look at the audience, right? I came in with a high from D1, and so I wanted to start with the high. And here you suddenly drop saying, oh, this looks like this guy goes and on a killing machine. uh, and you would imagine that post the training he would have become a commando. And so that was not clear either. So yes, the first sequence was good, but again, as a entirety, it felt like okay, and then it dips, right? And then it dips, like for the next foreseeable 2 hours. The story meanders left, right, and center, and then it picks up post during the interval. And I thought they had a good point to not end it so easily, so quickly. That conflict, that he got recognized in the washroom, they could have heightened the tension. That will he, won't he, did he, didn't, and so on. So, but that they missed that part. And then the cover up that Alam did by slashing his face, it all seemed very and very quick. This suspicion game that finally came with SP Chowdhury, that he started being suspicious of Hamza, even that to me was little light. It needed to have two or three sequences where it starts off as a, nah, that's not possible. Two, like, there could be something to it. Three is like, dude, now my gut feel is adding up. I think that sequence did not come up as strongly as it should have. And so I have rated authenticism, realism, believability little lower. It's more like 2.5. So, but I don't do that. So 3 is where it is. Um, Plot strength, like I said, all of these are covered. Soundtrack songs, clearly the first D1 was fantastic. D2, I mean, I can agree that it didn't warrant any songs, but even I think they overdid the 90s mix a little bit. It was almost becoming too repetitive. Like you just inserted it. It lost its novelty. Let's put it this way. In D1, it was novelty. It was contrasting. Like there was bloodbath going on, but you showed a nice contrast to it. That was good. But in D2, it became a little contrived. I thought so. Not a great experience. Plot twist. That is where D2 goes off the charts. Now I'll give you a, like, I do not think that anybody anticipated the plot twist, but it almost seemed, unless Mr. Dhar says, yeah, it was always in the plot, it was always the case, we'll never know. It almost seemed like, what do I do to make the story little more complicated, right? Little more. I'm thinking of those movies where Abbas Mastan is what I'm thinking. Like they reached a stage where they started off well in some of the earlier movies with the crazy twists, but towards their filmography, I think it was a race or something which I remember. It started not making sense. It almost seemed that you wanted a twist for the sake of twist. So this was a tightrope. largely delivered because of Mr. Rakesh Bedi, Jamil Jamali's. The character was fleshed out well, and so it landed. I would give you, but I would be a little nervous that little here and there, and it would have derailed completely. It would have seemed very artificial, doesn't make sense, and all. And so, but I give you that it was like wow, that was good stuff. And his lack of expressions in the vehicle, in the car, when they are together, was very well done. There was not over explaining and all that. I don't know if I've yeah, I'll come to that bit, the exposition bit of it. And so the script, as it were, sounded, it was far more tighter in D1 than it was in D2. It was quite loose, and we have spoken about it in editing and runtime. The last bit, so we have spoken all the above. Let's go down to screenplay, character performances, support character performances, and dialogues. Couple of things, right? In the main character performances, that of Ranveer Singh, you've got into the zone of the character. That was quite evident. The challenge, therefore, is not to overdo it, not to fall over the other side. It is still doing little less. I think the ideal performance, and I know it's very difficult or easier said than done, is when you could have hit a peak and just remain just below the peak, or just hitting it once in a while and not going over. D2, somewhere it seemed a little going a little over the top, right? Largely a good performance, no doubt about it. The nuances were good, the expressions were good, the hair was good. But somewhere, especially, I look at the scene when he was struck with grief. A lot of people are appreciating when Alam died and he went into the tea shop. The other part is, right, I mean, in the realm of believability, he is now a very popular and famous figure. Generally, they are never left alone. And he generally struts into the tea shop in the middle of the night and has tea. Keep that aside. Yeah, there needed to be that much more. I thought that was a little underplayed. It could have been little more expressive, and so on and so forth. So smaller things. But by and large, does he do a good job? He does a good job. Arjun Rampal, Major Iqbal's character, I thought there was so much scope for him to in to to showcase the pain inside, pain for where he wanted his country to be to where it is, pain to where he wanted to be to where he is, pain on where he wanted his relation with his parents to be to where it is. There was lot of ingredient in that character arc for him, that pain, whereas the only thing we saw was rage, boxing and gnashing teeth and all. The pain had to come in, that you start to believe in their cause. That's when the audience gets invested, and that's where, despite a great performance, couldn't get invested beyond a point. Lesser said about Sarah Arjun's character, Yelena, and even SP Chaudhary's character kind of took a meandering low dip, because it became like this regular cop. He was supposed to be vile, he was supposed to be street smart, and he had a little bit of foolhardiness as well. So it's a tricky mix of all these three elements that needed to come out, whereas the foolhardiness came out little more. And again, cringy dialogues, "Jahan dard hai, wahan mard hai," like seriously. And so it kind of lowered his gravitas. The fear factor was built in the opening introduction scenes, like how he was introduced as the jinn. That elevated the anticipation of this person. In D2, it kind of lowered his position with too much of cringy dialogues, and I think, even again, the continuity, he hadn't grayed at all, like he hadn't aged at all. And so I wanted to see some more grays. I wanted to see the stress, and nothing had happened to me. It can't be like that, right? So those missing nitty-gritties were there. And therefore, the final part is of the dialogues. I was very disappointed, like seriously disappointed. You had some of the best available resources to come up with some of the best dialogues, which are realistic, not what we are used to the tropes in Hindi cinema. मैं तुझे जला दूंगा, मैं तुझे मार दूंगा, इतना मारो. Like, why do you want to do all those tropey dialogues? Where is the authenticity? Where is, in fact, many of the sequences didn't even warrant a dialogue, and that would have created an enough big impact because you are done well in D1 capturing the expressions. Like, think of Rahman Dickit's expression when the kid died, when there was not too much of dialogues in there, and it's to fundamentally assume that your audience is intelligent. I think in D2 the assumption regressed, saying that the audience may not have understood so much. I have to explain everything. There was so much exposition that it was unpalatable at some point, right? They were explaining everything. I did this because this happened, and so this had to happen, and therefore A plus B plus C equals D. It's like, no, don't do that. It completely derails the narrative, right? And so it was very important to someone to be very strict with the dialogue writing and editing, and that's where they missed the trick a lot. That's the scorecard for you. We can agree, disagree, agree to disagree, and that's fine. I must have missed out on many other points. And if I've said something which probably I'm misreading it, I'm happy to acknowledge change. But then the final bit is the score. So where do we stand? So if you see the final score, max points like 20, these are 20 questions, 5 points is the max that you can score. So it gets to about 70 and D2 gets about 50. 70 in my books is very high, but 50 is probably, I'm just thinking, even if not 50, give or take, it would have been, say, 55, like a little here and there. It wouldn't have hit 70, let's put it this way. I could argue that 70 could have been 75, that is fine, but very hard. So, long story short, good effort, good refreshing take on storytelling, departure from what we are used to seeing and tired of seeing, and the basic cliches. Overall, D1 plus D2. But in D2 alone, you've kind of dropped the ball there and played safe so that yet another 1,000 crore loads for you. Good for you, but I thought cinematically you had a chance to raise the bar higher than D1 because you had that content. On that note, that's all the time I had for this scorecard review. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did presenting it to you. If you like this kind of content, if you like this kind of review mechanism, please do leave a comment below and like, share, and subscribe. And let's build a tribe of people who enjoy the finer nuance and who just don't say, boss, I just want some time pass entertainment. I have enough struggles in my life. I just want to go there and enjoy the AC, enjoy the popcorn, check my phone, and yeah, there's a movie going on. I'm not trying to engage that audience. I'm trying to engage the audience who is invested in a movie, who appreciates the hard work that somebody has put in for 1.5 years, 2 years in bringing this final product, and the entire technicians, the entire community who makes this one product final. So one has to give a detailed appreciation, critique, not criticism, critique. And so that the idea is to only be appreciative that they can do it even better the next time around. My name is Ayan and you're watching Aayanisms. Till we meet the next time.